There you go. Julie, Eunice and I are so glad you could join our prayer group. Lord knows we need prayer now more than ever.
Amen, sister. Barbara and I just love to lift the needs of others up in prayer.
Well, I appreciate your invitation.
Well, enough of this chitter chatter. We got to get this show on the road. Now, I don't know if you've heard, but the Hendersons are in real need of prayer. Tom Henderson lost his job.
Did you see Tom Jr.'s haircut the other day? It looked like a porcupine on Red Bull.
I hear Tom Sr. spends all day on the computer, looking at the internet, watching videos on the YouTube.
That's probably why he got fired.
Oh, no. His boss caught him on the surveillance camera playing Texas Hold'em.
Hold them accountable, I say. I mean, it's one thing for housewives like us to have hobbies, but he is a man of the church. He has a family. He should know better. You know, I would like to lift up Verna Carlson. She has not been feeling very well.
What's wrong with her?
Well, I heard it was her weight, 5 pounds in 1 week.
More like 15. Someone needs to tell her that eating ice cream will not save her demonic children.
Oh, don't we know it? That little Jeffrey almost ruined the service the other day, singing at the top of his lungs for all the world to hear.
So wrong.
I have a prayer request. The Whitmans are going back to Peru for a month to build houses.
Oh, they worked so hard over there in that poor country. That's a good prayer request.
They're such a nice couple, and her apple pie was the hit of the bake sale.
Oh, yeah, but what about that V-neck sweater? I mean, if it had been any lower, well, I just didn't think that it was becoming.
I noticed that too. I didn't want to say anything.
And let's not forget the dress that she wore last Easter.
I noticed that too. I didn't want to say anything.
I have another prayer request for us because we're just sitting here gossiping, and I was thinking that, you know, we shouldn't be tearing down our brothers and sisters. We should be edifying them and lifting them up. So we should probably pray for ourselves.
Well, I guess you're right.
We should know better.
Yes, we should.
No, I do it too. I mean, last week at the picnic, I told everybody that Betty's son was going to jail, and I found out he's going to Yale.
Well,
How?
I don't know what happened to us.
You know who's really bad at gossip?
Who?
That's a little too close for home, isn't it? Would you turn with me? We're looking at the Matthew 18 principle and how to deal with conflict. And we're going to zero in on Matthew 18, verse 15. Let's jump in. Matthew chapter 18, verse 15, still in the first phase. Matthew 18 principle has 3 phases. You want to stay in phase 1. You don't want to go to the upper. The stakes get higher with the other 2 phases. So most of our living needs to be in phase 1 of Matthew chapter 18, verse 15. If your brother, what? Sins against you, go and show him his fault. That's what we're going to zero in on. Go, show him his fault. That phrase. Just between the 2 of you, if he listens to you, you have won your brother over. That last sentence is for next Sunday. The series that we are in is the hurt that heals. How to confront our conflict constructively. Let's pray. Lord Jesus, I pray in the next few minutes, we're going to have to move quickly, but I pray that you'll take God's word and speak to us about our integrity in the conflict of our relationships. Father, some of the greatest spiritual growth is to be had when we have to face conflict, and we do it well. The mark of a great family, the mark of a great home, is not the absence of conflict. It's how we deal with it. Open our minds and hearts. In Jesus' name I pray. And everybody said. Last week we talked about 3 principles out of Matthew 18, 3 things we are called to do before we do any confronting, any even drawing any conclusions. 3 things we do if we're going to confront our conflict constructively and if we're going to have integrity in our relationships. Remember what those 3 things were? Before we say, do, conclude anything, we consider what? Who it is. Who is it that has offended me? We talked about hurting people hurt people. If you take the time to find out what the sliver is in their hand, it might make a difference in how you respond to them. We talked about, what's the second thing we talked about? What it is. If your brother sins, which we agreed last week is different than personal opinion. And some things, and this is absolutely a huge part of the Matthew 18 principle, some things ought to roll off our back. Some things we ought to develop a thick enough skin that we just let it go. Sin's a big deal. But we can have conflict over something short of sin. Be careful because you only get to die once. Choose your hills carefully. Remember that? And then the third thing we're called to do before we say, think, or do anything about the conflict is what? Consider where it is. If your brother sins against you as opposed to somebody else. And we talked about guarding our ears. There wasn't a lot of ear guarding in that video we just saw, was there? I mean, everybody wanted to hear the juice. Everybody wanted to hear the news. Everybody wanted to hear the gospel. But if we're going to practice Matthew 18, when somebody comes to you and you're not the offender and you're not the one involved, guard your ears and carry water, not gas. Are we all right? And we all committed to that as a group at the end. I'm going to ask you to commit to 3 more principles this morning in the Matthew 18 principle. Number 1, or we could almost say number 4. This is a continuation of even last Sunday. Before we say anything, do anything, conclude anything, we need to make sure, I'm going to put it this way, we gravitate or we move toward the right process. And I'm going to make this a little bit more simple. Make sure, before we say, think, or do anything, make sure we make the right start towards this confronting. If your brother, let's move into the next phrase of verse 15. If your brother sins against you, what's the next 2-letter word? What is it? Go. Now here's the $1 million question. Who is doing the going? The offender or the offendee? Now see, guys, that's a curveball. That goes against human nature. That's a curveball of Matthew 18. Because it's the offendee that's supposed to make the first step. You think we do that? Shoot. You know what we do? We wait and we wait until God sends his holy hounds of heaven on this guy, whoever the offender is, and just fill him up with so much kind of guilt and condemnation that he comes crawling back to us and beg us for forgiveness. And we wait, and we wait, and we wait. And that old boy just isn't coming. And we're seething, and the longer it takes for him to get under that conviction, the more ticked we become. We say, boy, that guy can sure handle a lot of conviction, you know? And then, isn't this true, guys? Hasn't this happened to every one of us in this room? Someday, I don't know, 2-3 weeks, maybe a month down the road, we run into that guy or that gal out at the mall. They're not under any conviction whatsoever. God hasn't sent his hounds of heaven. He hadn't even sent a chihuahua on that guy. He is in perfect peace. You, on the other hand, have lost all your peace because you didn't go. You know what the Bible says? While we were yet sinners, Christ, you know what that means? He took the first step. He took the first step in healing. He didn't wait for us to come groveling to Him, asking forgiveness. While we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. We are called to emulate that. If someone has offended you and you're waiting for that person to come begging for forgiveness, you need to stop having your pity poor me party. You should do one of two things. You should go, or you should let it go. None of this pity poor me stuff. I'm tired of getting invited to pity poor me parties. And in all honesty, I've invited you to a few of my pity poor me parties. Right? I mean, I was reading, I don't know if I have time for this, I was reading about a couple who was engaged to be married. They were 32 years old. They lived in the same apartment complex right across the hall from each other. They were within a month of the wedding and had an argument. I don't even know what it was. They had a knockdown, drag out, and it was so bad they broke up and the wedding never happened. And they never talked to each other. They passed each other in the hall. They'd look the other way. If someone was waiting, one of them was waiting to get on the elevator, and the elevator doors open, and the other one was on it, they wouldn't get. They'd go walk down the stairs 14 flights just to, stay away because they were so ticked. They were so ticked. That went on for 42 years. The only thing that ever happened was once a week, the fella would slip a note underneath her door. It wasn't an apology note. I don't even know what the note said. It was probably just some of the highlights of his week, the week before. There was no apology. He didn't knock on the door. He didn't present himself to her. He just slipped a note every Friday underneath her door for 42 years. At the end of 42 years, he finally had enough. He went across the hall and knocked on her door. And she opened it. And he asked if he'd come in. To his shock, she let him in. And he hemmed and hawed, and finally he apologized. And to his shock, she forgave him. And so he just decided to go for broke. Said, "Would you ever consider marrying me again?" She said yes. And at 72 years of age, they got married. 42 years, 2,000, I wrote it down because I knew I'd forget it, 2,184 notes. They get married. And you think, oh, isn't that sweet? It's not sweet. It's a terrible tragedy. All the life they lost. There'll never be a family. There'll never be children. All because somebody wouldn't take the first step. And I think about that and I ask, I wonder how many relationships in this room, how many marriages, how many families, how many friendships, how many partnerships, maybe how many churches don't have any life because somebody isn't taking the first step in their conflict. While we were yet, Jesus died for us. Somebody in this room needs to take responsibility for some conflict that's going on somewhere in your life. You need to make the first step to heal that relationship. That is the Matthew 18 principle. You need to stop waiting and stop having pity poor me parties and get it done. Number two, and maybe number 5, depending on how you want to look at this, make sure you gravitate to the right process. Number 2, or number 5, make sure you go to the right person. Look at the phrase again. If your brother sins against you, go and what? Show him, or if you, depending on your version, tell him. Who's him? The offender. The dirty dog that did the deed. Okay? You go to him. Now, you think we do that? Do we? Why go to him and risk a major confrontation when we can go to our best bud and get all affirmed in our negative thinking. If we go to our best bud and he doesn't guard his ears like we talked about last week, and he takes it all in and he starts reaffirming us, and we start hearing words like, oh, that dirty dog, I can't believe he did that. Just like what we heard on the video just a minute ago. And oh, that feels so good. Doesn't that feel good to get affirmed and all the poison you're spitting out? Now, guys, I'm going to tell you straight up. This principle right here of going to the right person is the number one hardest principle I've seen Christians live by. Even harder than tithing. I've talked to you about how hard it is to preach tithing every year because you get in people's pocketbooks and you talk about copping attitudes. That doesn't compare to this. I have seen some unbelievable spiritual giants absolutely fail at this. It's so easy to go to the wrong person and start spilling your poison. And guys, it's killing us. It's absolutely killing us. Man, I could go so many directions on this. Maybe I'll say this. I was reading, you've probably read the same thing. I was reading about this fellow. He was brand new in his faith. He was just starting to come to church. His name was Hank. He had this beat up old pickup truck. And I mean, he was brand new, and he didn't know squat, right? And there was this gal, something like the people we just saw in the video. She was kind of the Miss Gossip. Everybody was afraid of her because they thought that she would start spreading gossip on them. So they kind of stayed away from her. And this guy, his name was Hank, he was doing so well in his faith. But she's driving through town, and it's late on Friday night, and she sees this it's a very identifiable beat up old, he was the only one driving this truck, and it was parked out in front of the only bar in town late Friday night. And she saw it, and so she starts spreading her poison. She doesn't go to Hank, she goes to everybody else. She goes to everybody that's going to affirm her in this negative junk. She starts spreading the rumor. Hank's an alcoholic. Hank's a boozer. You know, he can't control his alcohol because she saw his truck in front of the bar on Friday night. And so it spreads around. Pretty soon it gets to Hank, this new Christian. That what's been said about him. And now Hank's this quiet guy. He's kind of laid back guy, but he's a common sense kind of guy. And if you're familiar with this event, he doesn't go to her like he should have. But this is a young Christian. Okay, probably should have gone to her instead. Do you remember what this guy does? On a late Friday night, he parks his truck in her driveway and leaves it there all night. Never does any gossiping again for the rest of her life. Cured her on the spot. No more slander. You know what I mean? Listen, guys. This thing about going to the right person. It is the hardest principle I have seen in my 20... You know that this is my 29th anniversary of being pastor of this church this Sunday? Do you know that? Thank you. Thank you. What a privilege. What a privilege it is. In my 29 years of being a senior pastor and being assistant pastor for several years before that, this principle right here is the hardest I've seen Christians practice. And it's killing us. Are we okay? Go to the right person. That person is not your best bud. If you can't get over this, if it can't roll off your back, if it's hanging there and you can't get over it, and it's big enough to risk it, go to the person who's offended you and get it done. That is biblical integrity in your relationships. Number 3, write this down. Before we say anything, before we do anything, we gravitate to the right process. We take the right step. We become responsible for the healing by going to the person who's hurt us. Number 2, we be sure to go to the right person, not our best bud. No gossip, no slander. Number 3, write this down. Be sure you get to the right problem. Write that down. Be sure you get to the right problem. If your brother sins against you, go show him what? Say what? Show him his fault. Get to the issue. You know what I've observed? A lot of times we'll go to the right person, but we won't get to the right issue. You know what we do? We pretend there isn't an issue. You know who's the biggest? I probably shouldn't go down here. This is thin ice. I'm going to get in trouble going here. But I told this to my prayer partner. They're praying for me. So guys, you pray for me right now, okay? Do you know who I think sometimes is the biggest offender of going to the right person but not getting to the right issue and pretending? Southerners. Ooh. Southerners. You know why? It's not in our culture. It's not in our culture to be that honest. Now, you go up north, shoot, man. You get all kinds of junk. You know, boom, 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 especially Northeast. I'm from the Northwest. I'm from the Midwest, I should say. And we're not quite as bad as the Northeast. And to be honest, I love Southern culture a whole lot better, and I enjoy Northern culture. But in Indiana, I tell you, the most independent people you will ever meet on the face of the earth are Indiana farmers. Right? Because they're self-made people. What you see is what you get. Now, if they become your friend, shoot, man, you got a friend for life. But if there's something amiss, they're going to let you know. Right between your eyes. You know, because that's part of the culture. Down here, it's not part of the culture. Those northern Yankees, they think we love them so much, they come down, we show them all kinds of sugar, but they don't hear what we say about them when they go back north. Am I right about that? Huh? Now, guys, if we do that in our individual lives, and we keep doing that, where what's on our face is not matching what's in our heart, you know what happens when we do that for a long time? We stop being real. We stop being real. We stop being transparent. We stop being honest. And we start wearing that fake, plastic, religious mask that God hates. Because what's on our face isn't matching what's in our heart. And we're faking it. We're manipulating. Guys, we go down that road enough, we even start manipulating ourselves that we don't even know what truth is. I'm a history buff. I enjoy history. And I've even refreshed myself knowing what was coming this morning on a huge event, one of the biggest events in the history of the world. In May of 1664 in London, England, a handful of people come down with a new sickness. It had some abdominal pain. It had some diarrhea, had some vomiting, had some weakness, some shock, even had, I'm not even getting all the symptoms, but part of it was a turning black in their skin because of gangrene. And even though everybody who got this sickness died, nobody really thought anything of it because it's just a handful of people in one of the largest cities in the world. That was in May of 1664. In May of 1665, 1 year later, 600 people died of that same thing. In June of 1665, 1 month later, 6,000 people died. In July of that same year, 1 month later, 17,000 people died. By August of that year, 1 month later, 31,000 people have died. The bubonic plague lasts in London. This is the second phase of it. And this is just one city. It's spread throughout. It took away a fourth of the entire population of Europe. If you did it worldwide, the plague lasted for 300 years. And it killed over 2 million people. The population of the earth went from 500 million to 300 million in the span of that time. It took the world 200 years to make that up. 200 million people. Do you know what they thought caused it? Do you remember? They thought it was caused by the pollution of the chimneys in London. And so the doctors thought, if we could get the people out of London and into the countryside and get them to breathe the country air, that maybe that would solve the problem. So they got them out in the country. They walked around the flowers and tried to get them to breathe the air. For the ones that were too weak to do it, they would stuff flowers in their pockets, and so that they would be laying in their beds. And for those that were near death, they would take rose petals and burn it in a tin cup and put it underneath their nose, so that the fragrance and the smoke of the petals would go up into their nostrils and try to drive away the plague and the pollution. And they all died. They all died. And most of you know the nursery rhyme. Ring around the rosy, pockets full of posies, ashes, ashes, we all fall down. How long have we been singing that to our kids? That's about the bubonic plague. Can you believe that? How many times have we said that as our kids are falling asleep at night? Come to find out, the plague wasn't caused by air pollution. It was caused by the bite of a tick, initially on a silkworm rat, which spread to normal rats. You know what actually ended the plague? The Great London Fire, where the whole town burned down, and it destroyed the rats, and it destroyed the trash that the rats were living on. And that's when they figured out that the real cause of the bubonic plague was a tick bite. It was the beginning of public sanitation works. The reason we pay people to carry our trash away initiated with the bubonic plague. And I think, how many people died because they didn't get to the real problem? Ultimately, over 325 million people across the earth, because they didn't get to the real problem. And I think about that, and I think, how many marriages are dying in this room because we're not getting to the right problem? How many friendships, how many partnerships are dying because we're not getting to the right problem? We're pretending, we're wearing our mask. We're pretending things are okay when they're not okay. How many churches are dying because we're not getting to the real issues? We're not willing to have integrity in our relationships. And when conflict arises, the issue is not that there's conflict. Good night, give me a break. If we're a family, then there's conflict. It's how we deal with it. These religious plastic masks are killing us. Guys, I believe that we're in store for a great year this year. We've done some steps of faith. The board has taken some steps of faith that I'm really excited about, that I think is going to lead us maybe to our first year of open field running we've had in quite a while. I'm really excited about it. And September 23rd is a part of all that. This is the perfect time. at the threshold of this new, I think, new chapter for us, to remind ourselves, this is how we guard our unity. This is how we become a family. We don't pretend that there aren't issues. There are issues, and we deal with them biblically. And we take off our masks so that what's on our face matches what's in our heart.